She told herself it was only a hug. A harmless, simple, friendly, soft little squeeze. Something humans did all the time to comfort each other. No hidden meaning. No bold signals. No flirting. Definitely no. Please wrap your fluffy alien tail around me like a clingy octopus and lift me off the ground. She absolutely did not want that. Okay, maybe she wanted it a tiny bit. A crumb. A microscopic amount. But it wasn't her fault he was stupidly soft-looking, stupidly gentle, stupidly polite, and stupidly unaware that every time his tail swished behind him it made her brain short-circuit. All she wanted was comfort. Just a moment of warmth after a long, exhausting shift. Engineering repairs had been chaos. Dropped tools, exploding coolant pipes, a hover crate that refused to cooperate, and somehow chased her down a hallway like a vengeful metal duck. She needed stress relief. She needed grounding. She needed him. He appeared right when she was ready to collapse onto the floor. Calm, steady, glowing eyes full of concern. His fluffy tail hovered behind him like a nervous banner, twitching in small circles, reacting to her exhaustion before she even spoke. He always did that, noticed things she wasn't saying. It made her feel seen. Safe. She rubbed her face and groaned. I'm done. Overheated. Cooked. Mentally fried. If someone pokes me, I'll evaporate. His head tilted. You require comfort? Yes, she said, then winced. He always took words literally. I mean, humans hug sometimes. It helps. He blinked slowly, processing this with the same seriousness he used for structural failure reports. Hug. Physical compression of torsos? She snorted. You make it sound like a scientific procedure. It's just a friendly gesture. His tail flicked sharply, like he was trying to swat invisible insects. My species warns against unregulated contact. She waved a hand dismissively. Relax, I'm not going to break you. His expression shifted to mild panic, but he didn't step back. If anything, he hovered closer, concern overpowering caution. She took that as permission. Mistake number 1. She lifted her arms slowly, giving him plenty of time to step away if he wanted. But he didn't. He only stiffened, eyes widening, tail curling inward like it sensed danger. She didn't think twice. She leaned in and wrapped her arms around his warm, firm torso. For approximately half a second, everything was fine. Then all hell broke loose. It started with a jerk, his body tensing like she'd hit a hidden switch. His breath hitched. His hands snapped up but didn't push her away. Instead, they hovered awkwardly in the air like he didn't know where to put them. And then she heard it. A whoosh behind her. Before she could look, something thick, soft, and unbelievably strong wrapped around her waist. One loop. Then another. Her feet left the ground as the coil tightened, pulling her flush against him. She squeaked. Actually squeaked. Like a startled toy. Hey, what? He looked mortified. I warned you. His tail continued its mission, sliding down her legs, curling around her thighs with single-minded determination. It wasn't painful, just firm, secure, and way too intimate. Like being held by a sentient heated blanket with no concept of boundaries. She struggled uselessly in midair. Your tail is kidnapping me. It is responding to instinct, he said desperately, trying to pry it off. I am attempting to override. Wait, stop tightening. No, not that direction. The tail ignored him entirely and pulled her even closer, pressing her to his chest until she could feel every beat of his racing pulse. The warmth radiating off him was ridiculous. Soothing. Dangerous. And way too pleasant. She tried to sound outraged, but her voice came out embarrassingly soft. This is not a normal hug. It is not supposed to be a hug, he nearly yelped. He dug his fingers under one coil and pulled. The tail responded by tightening around her hips like a jealous lover. She gasped, clinging to his shoulders for balance. He froze, eyes darting to where her hands gripped him. Please refrain from touching me like that, he whispered. She blinked. You're literally touching me more. I am not doing this. My tail is acting independently. It is an involuntary reaction to. He clamped his mouth shut. To what? She demanded. He looked away, ears flushing a deep, glowing color. Warmth. Emotional proximity. Mutual attraction cues. She went still. Mutual? The tail twitched like it understood English and was very proud of itself. He groaned into his palms. Please disregard that. The tail is overreactive. But she couldn't stop staring at him. At his flustered eyes. At how gently his hands now supported her, even as his tail refused to let go. At the trembling breath he let out whenever her body shifted against his. Just to be clear, she said slowly, I hugged you because I needed comfort. I didn't expect your tail to, cocoon me. It is not a cocoon, he muttered. The tail wrapped one more loop around her waist. Fine, he sighed. It is a cocoon. She couldn't help it, she laughed. Hysterically. Breathlessly. And with every laugh, his tail squeezed in what suspiciously felt like affection. He looked at her with a mix of exasperation and helpless fondness. You find this amusing? A little. She smiled. Also terrifying. He swallowed hard. I assure you I am attempting to regain control. No rush, she murmured before thinking. His eyes widened. No rush? The tail, traitor that it was, vibrated in smug agreement. She buried her burning face in his chest. I hate your tail. It does not hate you, he whispered. The tail tightened around her hips again. See? He muttered miserably. It is very fond. The tail didn't just hold her, it presented her. That was the best way to describe it. It stood there like a smug creature displaying its prize, lifting her a little higher every time she tried to wiggle down. She wasn't sure what emotion was worse, mortification or the strange fluttery warmth in her stomach that refused to die, no matter how embarrassing this became. He, meanwhile, looked like he'd walked straight into a nightmare he had specifically tried to warn her about. His hands hovered helplessly around her waist, never quite touching, as if afraid even a brush of his fingers would trigger the tail even more. The irony was unbearable. The tail had wrapped her so tightly against him that avoiding contact was physically impossible. It is behaving worse than usual, he muttered, grabbing the tail and trying to peel one stubborn coil loose. The coil responded by tightening, lifting her another inch. She yelped in surprise and instinctively clung to his neck. This time his whole body froze. Completely. The only thing that moved was his ears, which shot straight up like an alarm had gone off. His voice came out strained. Please refrain from sudden movements. It interprets those as escalation signals. She stared at him. Escalation toward what? The tail answered by giving a slow, deliberate squeeze that made her toes curl inside her boots. It is attempting to secure a pairing hold, he said through clenched teeth, as though admitting a crime. It senses high compatibility and reacts to emotional resonance. She blinked. Are you saying your tail thinks we're dating? It thinks we should be, he corrected miserably. Her face burst into heat. Oh no. Oh, this is so much worse than I thought. You understand my distress. Your distress? I'm the one being hogtied by your limb. He shot her an incredulous look. It is my limb. I am also trapped. She opened her mouth to argue, but realized he was right. His arms were pinned awkwardly around her, his posture hunched to stabilize her weight, and his tail was coiling with enough force to make movement nearly impossible for either of them. It would have been tragic if it wasn't so ridiculously funny. She shifted, trying to find a less awkward position. The tail immediately reacted, wrapping a loop higher up her back and pulling her chest against his. She squeaked again. Why did she always squeak around him? And his breath hitched like he'd been electrocuted. I told you, he whispered hoarsely. Sudden movement is not advised. She swallowed, cheeks blazing. I wasn't trying to provoke it. The tail, smug beyond belief, curled the tip near her hip like it was patting itself on the back. She could practically feel the self-satisfaction radiating from it. He tugged at it again, clearly desperate. Release. Release her. Stop misbehaving. This is inappropriate contact. The tail responded by squeezing her even closer. She stared at him. Is it disobeying you on purpose? He let out a tortured groan. It responds to subconscious signals. And right now I am extremely conflicted. Conflicted was one word for it. The temperature of his body said something closer to flustered panic mixed with something else. Something softer and badly hidden. Something his tail was unfairly eager to broadcast. Okay, deep breath. She needed to think. You said it reacts to emotional signals, right? She asked. He nodded cautiously. Correct. So, what if we try to calm down? Bring everything back to neutral? His eyes flickered over her face, her lips, her cheeks, everything he was trying desperately not to be caught staring at. Yes. Neutral. We must achieve emotional neutrality. They stared at each other. Neither of them looked neutral. He inhaled shakily. I am attempting to regulate. Please do not be alarmed. She nodded. Okay. Sure. I'll try too. Silence stretched between them. Extremely awkward silence. His breath brushed her cheek, warm and uneven. She tried staring at a wall, but his chest rose and fell right against her, and it was impossible to ignore how firm he was. Or how steady his heart sounded. Or how his scent had a gentle, earthy sweetness that made her brain melt into unhelpful thoughts. The tail purred, actually purred, and tightened again. He winced. It believes you are enjoying this. I'm not enjoying this. She lied instantly. The tail squeezed in doubt. He gave her a look that said he heard the lie loud and clear. She folded her arms stubbornly, which only resulted in pressing herself more firmly against him. They both panicked at the same time. Don't move. I wasn't trying to. He stumbled backward and steadied her with his hands, finally placing them firmly on her hips in order to stop the tail from hoisting her any higher. The moment his fingers made contact, the tail shivered and let out a low rumble like it had been waiting for that exact cue. She froze. He froze. The tail tightened in approval. The air between them thickened with a tension no amount of denial could cover. He swallowed hard. It is convinced we are mutually attracted. Her voice came out thin. It's wrong. The tail gave a skeptical squeeze. He didn't challenge her words, but his eyes did. They softened, darkened with something vulnerable and unguarded. Something she wasn't prepared to see but couldn't look away from. Is it? He whispered. Her breath caught. Maybe I didn't say. Your heart rate is elevated, he murmured. Because your tail is squeezing the life out of me. That is only partly true. The tail purred again. She groaned into his shoulder. Your tail is a menace. It is responding to feelings, he said softly, the faintest hint of wonder in his tone. Yours or mine? She asked before thinking. His voice dropped. Both. She fell silent. Her pulse hammered. The tail wrapped more gently now, like a blanket instead of a restraint, swaying slowly as though satisfied. She tried to say something clever or calm or sarcastic, but all that came out was a quiet, helpless truth. I don't hate being close to you. He stiffened, then relaxed, arms finally easing into the embrace instead of resisting it. When you hugged me, he said softly, I felt peace. The tail rewarded them both with another warm squeeze. She exhaled shakily. So how do we make it let go? He blushed, looking away. We must convince it that the emotional need has been fulfilled. She gulped. And how do we do that? He hesitated, flustered beyond belief. The tail assumes the next step is affection. Her eyes widened. Affection like? He nodded stiffly. Yes. Like that. The tail swished, eagerly awaiting their decision. They tried to step apart, both of them stiff and careful, but the tail had other plans. It wrapped another loop around her waist as soon as she shifted, lifting her slightly off the ground again. She yelped and grabbed onto his shoulders, flailing just enough to make him groan. "It refuses to comply," he muttered, tugging at the thick fur along its length. The tail only tightened in response, like it found his attempts insulting, or maybe it was just enjoying the show. She dangled there, legs wrapped slightly in the coil, and couldn't help but notice how warm he was, how strong his chest felt under her hands, how soft the glow of his skin was against her cheek. Her face heated up, and she pressed closer instinctively, which immediately made him freeze, eyes wide. "Please, remain still," he whispered, and she swallowed, realizing stillness was basically impossible when she was being suspended midair by a highly intelligent tail that seemed to have its own personality. They attempted walking toward the maintenance bay, hoping distance from the main corridor would give them some privacy. One careful step, then another, but every movement caused the tail to react. When she shifted to balance, it coiled higher along her back and pinched a little tighter around her thighs, sending sparks of flustered panic through her body. He tried to redirect it, guiding her with gentle hands, muttering technical-sounding phrases like "stabilize joint alignment" and "counterbalance vector." But the tail ignored all instructions and only pressed them closer together. They made it halfway down the hall before disaster struck. One awkward stumble over a loose panel caused them to topple into a soft maintenance cushion. The tail reacted instinctively, curling tightly around both of them to protect them, but in doing so, it wrapped her legs around his waist and pinned her chest to his. She let out a strangled laugh-panic hybrid that made him freeze mid-apology. Her hair fell across his face, brushing his glowing cheek, and he inhaled sharply, shifting slightly to avoid crushing her but not daring to let go entirely. Her mind scrambled as she tried to process the situation. She was on top of him, practically glued to his chest by a combination of tail and instinctual gravity, her arms looping around his shoulders for balance. The warmth radiating from his body was absurd, nearly unbearable, and the faint vibration of the tail thrumming against her back made her pulse hammer. She tried to tell herself this was a disaster, but her body was quietly telling her a completely different story. He was panicking so visibly it was almost comical. Fingers pressed against her waist, eyes darting between her flushed face and the tail's smug, triumphant loops. His ears twitched uncontrollably, and a faint shimmer ran along his skin in a way that betrayed how flustered he truly was. I cannot, this is not normal," he stammered, and she stifled a giggle despite herself. "I am immobilized by my own biology." "You're adorable when flustered," she whispered, leaning forward slightly to whisper it against the side of his neck. The tail responded immediately, coiling another tiny loop around her torso, snug but gentle, almost as if it had understood her words and agreed wholeheartedly. His breath hitched audibly, and he froze, one hand gripping the cushion beneath them while the other hovered nervously near her waist. This is inappropriate," he murmured, voice tight. She rolled her eyes and let out a soft laugh. "Not for me. I think it's nice." The words slipped out before she could stop them. He blinked, completely frozen, as if he just realized she had admitted exactly what his tail had suspected. The tail, of course, seemed smug, vibrating faintly as though satisfied with the results of its careful investigation. A few moments of stunned silence passed. Neither dared to move. Neither dared to speak more than necessary. The tail's coils gently supported her weight, holding her close like a guardian rather than a threat. Finally, she whispered, "I guess maybe it's reading both of our feelings." He swallowed hard, his glowing eyes locked on hers. "It is extremely perceptive," he admitted quietly, and the tiniest flush ran along his cheeks. "It is responding to honesty." Her heartbeat skipped. "So it's not just your tail liking me. It's us?" He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "It reacts to mutual signals. What we feel, and what we try not to say. It cannot lie." She swallowed, realizing her pulse had been giving her away the entire time. The tail vibrated again, nudging her even closer, like it approved of the honesty now filling the air. Her lips brushed the side of his collarbone, and she froze, feeling him stiffen beneath her. The warmth between them was overwhelming, tangible, and the hum of the tail thrumming along her back made her body feel like it was melting. Neither of them moved for what felt like an eternity. Then he whispered, "It is," asking for the next step. Her eyes widened. "The next step?" "Yes," he said quietly, breath shallow. "Mutual consent implied. Physical affection." The tail coiled a little tighter in anticipation, vibrating against them as though it could feel the tension building. She gulped. "You mean a kiss?" He didn't answer with words. His hand brushed the back of her neck gently, just enough to tilt her chin toward him. The tail hummed like an approving audience member. She hesitated only a fraction of a second before leaning in. Their lips met softly at first, hesitant and careful. The tail wrapped them even closer, as if it had orchestrated the perfect embrace. The first touch sparked heat through both of them, and suddenly hesitation evaporated. Their kiss deepened, tentative explorations giving way to something more confident as both realized the tail wasn't the only one invested in the closeness. Every coil, every vibration seemed to respond to their growing warmth, turning what started as a ridiculous, panic-inducing hug into something intimate, gentle, and unexpectedly perfect. Finally, they pulled back just enough to breathe, faces inches apart. The tail loosened slightly, humming softly like it was satisfied that its mission had succeeded. They both exhaled shakily, staring at each other, realizing for the first time that what had started as a comedic disaster had revealed feelings neither of them had dared to admit. "Your tail," she whispered, voice trembling with a mix of exasperation and fondness. "It is remarkable," he admitted softly, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "But the choice was ours." She smiled, leaning her forehead against his. "Then I guess we passed the test." The tail curled gently around them both, like a smug, fuzzy referee, and purred in quiet satisfaction. They stayed still for a long moment, the air around them thick with the warmth of shared heartbeat, and the faint vibration of the tail, now relaxed but still gently coiling around her waist like it had claimed ownership only to approve of the outcome. Her head rested against his chest, and she could feel his breath, steadying now after the initial panic. She had never been held so firmly and yet so tenderly, and the thought made her cheeks burn. Somehow, the ridiculousness of the situation, being suspended by an alien tail, their lips pressed together moments ago, faces flushed, made it all feel perfectly natural. He shifted slightly beneath her, hands finally relaxing along her back instead of hovering tensely. The tail, satisfied that its intervention had succeeded, loosened further but didn't fully release, leaving her gently cradled as if still making sure she was safe. She lifted her eyes to meet his, searching for the same vulnerability and wonder she felt mirrored in him. "So that was unexpected," she murmured, voice soft and uneven. He chuckled quietly, a low, warm sound that made her chest flutter. "Unexpected, yes. But not unpleasant." His hands brushed against her sides gently, and she shivered slightly, a mix of lingering adrenaline and the subtle thrill of intimacy. "I confess," he said, voice quieter now, almost shy. "I have felt something for you, long before this incident." Her heart skipped. "You mean you liked me?" she asked, half incredulous, half hopeful. She couldn't resist teasing. "Even before your tail turned me into a hostage?" A slow blush spread across his glowing cheeks. "Even then. Perhaps especially then I underestimated my own instincts." Her laugh, soft and breathless, mingled with the faint hum of the tail. "Well, you're full of surprises, aren't you?" He tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Only when circumstances dictate it." He shifted slightly to cradle her more comfortably. "And now," he hesitated, voice dropping to a whisper, "the choice to be close is ours." The tail seemed to understand, vibrating softly as though in agreement, wrapping one final loop around her in a gentle, approving hug. She let herself relax fully against him, feeling the warmth of his body and the pulse of the tail around them both. "So, dinner?" she asked, playful but hopeful, her head tilting slightly. His ears twitched, a visible flush of glowing embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "Dinner would be acceptable," he murmured, "provided the tail behaves itself." She snorted, leaning back slightly to look at it. It had relaxed completely, coiling around them like a plush scarf, tip flicking innocently. "It looks innocent now," she said, "but I have a feeling it's plotting." He chuckled, the sound deep and amused. "Yes, it has excellent taste." Their laughter mingled, and for the first time since the chaotic hug began, the tension fully released. Her legs were still slightly shaky from being held and suspended, and he steadied her effortlessly, fingers brushing hers as they adjusted. It was intimate and grounding at the same time, and she couldn't help but feel a thrill at the closeness. The tail gave one final gentle squeeze, almost like a congratulatory pat. She looked at it, mock scowling. "You're not getting away with that." It vibrated lightly in response, a soft, satisfied purr emanating from its core. He chuckled again, warmth radiating through his body as he looked down at her. "It seems to approve of us." She leaned closer, resting her forehead against his once more, and whispered, "Then I suppose we should make it official?" He smiled, an expression of tender vulnerability she had never seen before. "Yes. Official, by mutual consent, not by tail instinct." The tail shifted slightly, wrapping one final gentle coil around her waist, and she laughed softly, brushing a hand along its length. "Fine. I'll allow it, as long as it doesn't try to lift me again. It promises compliance," he said, though the faint twitch at the tip of his tail suggested it had a mind of its own. They both laughed, the sound mingling and floating in the warm air between them. Her heart was racing, not from fear, but from the thrill of connection, intimacy, and the absurdity of the entire situation. She tilted her head, daring a small, teasing smile. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought a hug could be so complicated." He gazed down at her, eyes glowing faintly with affection and embarrassment alike. "Nor did I," he admitted. "Yet, it seems complications can be rewarding." She smiled, resting her cheek against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her. The tail wrapped gently around both of them, a silent witness and guardian, and she felt a sense of warmth and protection she hadn't known she was missing. "Then let's see where this rewarding complication takes us," she murmured, a soft laugh escaping her. He bent slightly, brushing a gentle kiss across her forehead, and whispered, "Together." The tail vibrated faintly, content and smug, as if approving of the conclusion. She looked down at it, and shook her head, laughing softly. "We're never going to get rid of you, are we? It has excellent taste," he said quietly, fingers brushing hers once more. And with that they rose together, still wrapped in the tail's gentle embrace, stepping into a future that promised laughter, warmth, and a very, very intimate kind of affection that neither of them would ever forget.